Hey there, Bruce, and welcome back to Misericorde Volume 1. Let's just kick off from where we left off last time. Hanging out with Hedwig, shepherding and whatnot. Thank you for your help, Hedwig. Oh, you're welcome. It was a nice change. Glad to hear it. She smiled and clasped her hands together. I had no idea how she could have energy left to work, but I could scarcely finish my goodbye to her before she had fluttered off in the direction of the kitchen. She is a busy bee. Supper that evening was a quiet affair. Nearly everyone seemed exhausted. I remember that I was not the only one who hadn't gotten much sleep last night. Eustace didn't look at me once during the entire meal. A small part of me hoped that she was going to disappear and return with a pudding, like she had the first time we dined together, and reveal that her anger had been a front this whole time. The nuns trickled out one by one. I got up and stretched. I still felt incredibly stiff, and I realised that hiking out to the sheep and staying on my feet all day was not helping my recovery from last night's marathon. At the very least, I hadn't vomited and passed out today. Margaret and Flora were waiting for me when I left the rectory. Oh, hello. Hello, Hedwig. Flora has a question for you. I'm not 5, you know. I was going to ask anyway. Is something wrong? No, just last night. Did you mean it when you said you'd teach me how to paint? I think she means, would you be free to teach me how to paint, please? Sure. That. I must admit that I'd already forgotten this promise. I felt bad, even under duress. I shouldn't have made a commitment I could ignore so easily just to make Flora feel better. I had absolutely no business teaching anyone to draw, and I desperately wanted to say no. However, yes, of course. Where would be a good place to meet? I don't know. The library? I thought about the clutter on the desks in the library. How about we just do it back in the rectory here? There's a nice big table in there. Sure. Let's meet back here in a few minutes. I need to go and get my supplies. Flora nodded and skulked off in the direction of the dorms. I hadn't thought about it, but I was going to need access to my old cell. All of my illumination supplies, brushes, paints, ink, were still in there. My heart sank. I started walking toward the Superior's office. I would need her key. Margaret followed. Thank you, Hedwig. I was worried for a minute we were both going to look like real blackguards. I must admit I'd forgotten all about it, but I'm happy to help. Likewise. She was hanging around me all morning, and I was struggling to remember why. Then I remembered that we'd had a little heart-to-heart last night. Oh my, did you forget all about what happened? Oh no, how could I? Some details just took precedence over others. Right, she grinned. I should go check in on the cellars and make sure Adela and Marta haven't killed each other. Talk to you later, Hedwig. She broke from me at the staircase down to the cellars. I continued to the Superior's door and gave it a little knock. Oh, Sister Hedwig, is something wrong? Not at all. I need you to unlock my cell. Whatever for? It's a long story, but I promised Sister Flora I'd teach her about illuminating manuscripts. And I only just remembered that all of my tools and paints are still in there. Flora taking an interest in something? Goodness, we can't let this opportunity go to waste. Give me just a moment. The door closed. Shortly after it swung open again, the Superior emerged carrying her ring of keys. The unmistakable jingle sent a shiver up my spine. We took the stairs up to the second floor and continued down the hall. The huge door that had slammed and scared the sisters all witless was to my left. The wind was shaking it gently as something as big could shake at the very least. The walls around us seemed to pulse and vibrate as the door beat against its frame, as if we were in some great behemoth's lungs. As we turned to the right, I remembered the hideous carving Margaret had shown me with a jolt. Perhaps we really were in the presence of some monstrous creature. I thought about warning the Superior about the evil magic circle I'd seen, but I could find neither the words nor the courage to bring it up. It was so dark down here, I realised just how out of their way the sisters would have to come to seek my advice as anchoress. We stopped at the door. I stared at the hagioscope as the Superior looked for the right key. It was a bizarre device. I never really looked at it from the outside, but it looked rather cobbled together. The metal frame was wedged into the stone brick, and the little door looked ready to burst, rust right off its hinges. I opened it idly and took a peek inside. My heart sank as I realised it was impossible to see through into the cell from this side. There was no way that Catherine and I would have ever been able to see each other. The hole in the wall was big enough to pass the books I'd needed for transcribing through one at a time, but there was a bend in the middle that prevented direct access. It made me realise just how thick these stone walls were, how isolated I'd truly been. I spoke into the hatch. Hello? Feeling nostalgic? Here we are. She selected a key and inserted it in the door. The door lurched open. Oh, how embarrassing. What happened? Nothing. I just forgot which way some of the doors opened here. She stepped inside. With great trepidation, I followed. It was just as it had been left. I took a deep breath. I felt lightheaded. I went to the shelf and procured a wooden box from the bottom. I could hear the ink bottles rattling inside. This is all I need. Thank you. Very well. Shall we? I nodded. I didn't want to spend any longer in this place. I was not sure exactly how close the evil symbol was to my cell, but I wanted to put as much distance between it and myself as possible. I turned around and froze. There was something on my bed that should not be there. The half-finished copy of Matthew was sitting there. Spotted something else you needed? That's the one we threw out the window. No, just... This isn't where I left this. The book. Are you sure? I'm positive. You must be mistaken. I have the only key for this room. Perhaps you were reading it when Catherine came to collect you and forgot to put it back. That is not possible. I picked the book up and placed it on top of the box I was carrying. What is it? It's the last book I was writing before, well... I see. Goodness, it's in rough shape. It looks as if it wasn't properly covered in the cart ride up to the Abbey. James's actual crime might have been negligence. Nonetheless, I understand it must have been of some sentimental value. May I take it? I don't see why not. You can take anything from here as far as I'm concerned. I see no reason why this room should be locked at all anymore, to tell you the truth. I nodded. I wasn't about to explain that this book appearing on my bed felt like some sort of supernatural threat. At the very least, unfettered access to my old books was a happy outcome. If I could ever brave coming back here again, that is. We left the room and travelled back through the halls. The superior left to return to her office, no doubt swamped with clerical work. I stopped off by the dormitory to deposit the bedraggled book in my new sleeping quarters. Flora looked highly irritated when I finally made it back to the rectory. I'd been worried about the book, my cell, and the vile sigil all the way there, but my fear was quickly pushed out of my mind by Flora's verbal assault. You said you'd be a few minutes. I'm so sorry, I just had to get the superior to help me unlock the door to my old cell. I lifted up the box of supplies and rattled it gently. Oh, fair enough. Well, I brought some parchment. Oh, good. I would have been very embarrassed if I'd had to make another trip. Flora shrugged and hopped up the stairs to the door. She laid out 2 piles of simple paper. I set the box down between them and began unloading my supplies. Inks, gold paint and a few horsehair brushes. I pulled a chair out and sat down. Flora followed suit. So, where should we start? That's what I was going to ask you. Well, what's a moment from the Bible you'd like to try illuminating? I always like doing the Annunciation, or... That might be a little advanced for me. Oh, well. How about a letter? Just one letter? It's going a bit far in the other direction, don't you think? Not at all. There's a lot you can do with just one letter. Huh. Okay then. What letter would be good to start with? I suppose T is always useful. Or A. Flora snickered. Sure. Let's go with A then. You don't sound particularly enthused. It's a letter. I rummaged around my box of supplies and produced 2 hardened charcoal stubs. I handed one to Flora, who raised her eyebrows. Where'd you get these? You know, I'm not sure. They got passed to me through the squint whenever I got new supplies. They're much nicer than the ones I usually have. I didn't know what to say to this, so I ploughed ahead. I took one of the pieces of paper and began to sketch out a square in the top left corner. The paper was rougher and thinner than the parchment I was typically used to. I had only held paper a few times and never marked it. That's not an A. We're just putting a square down so we know where to fit the letter. Oh. She took up the stick of charcoal and hastily drew a square. It was a bit squiggly. Alright, so, now what I would do is, well, I wasn't really sure how to verbally describe my process, so I instead began to draw. In a quick swoop, I outlined a large A in my square and touched all the edges of the square, but left plenty of room for artistic embellishment. Flora squinted at my page and then attempted to follow suit. That's a good start. Now what? Well, typically, I'll ink the letter first and let it set. I don't do much of the detail work with the charcoal, it's a bit too thick for that. I peered into my supply box, wiggling my fingers. What colour would you like your letter to be? Red? Blue? Why are you talking to me like I'm a weird baby? Am I? Yes. You know, I'm almost 20, right? You don't need to do this performance for everything. I wasn't aware that I was performing. Right, I'd forgotten just how good Flora was at getting under my skin. My empathy toward her outburst and the Misericorde had overridden my usual distaste for her attitude. Just talk to me normally. This is how I talk to people normally. Come off it. Everything you say is a question, even if you're not actually asking anything. Oh, is she a New Zealander? Oh, is that how I come across? We glare at each other for a moment, but Flora eventually started giggling. Just like that. Oh. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. Happily, the tension seemed to have been released. I guess it's how you normally speak. You know, I haven't spoken to many people face to face. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. I feel a bit of an arsehole now. That's quite alright. Red or blue? Blue. I passed her the blue and took a red one for myself and then laid out 2 inkwells from the box. I popped the lid of mine open and procured 2 brushes. Flora was struggling to pop the cork out of her bottle of blue ink. Be careful opening that, it's... She managed to get the cork out, but in doing so it jostled the bottle forward forcefully. A splash of blue ink landed on her sheet of paper. Here, let me... I reached over and picked up her page, curling it and shaking it to attempt to get some of the ink back into the bottle on the table. I was moderately successful, but there was a blue streak left on the paper. Sorry. It's not a problem. Just be careful, ink is quite valuable. I said I was sorry. I poured some of my red ink into a well and dipped the brush in. Try to follow these lines with as few strokes as possible. That way it dries without a messy looking texture. I tried to demonstrate, but the paper was soaking up more of the ink than I was used to, rendering this lesson a little moot. I forged ahead anyway until I had a satisfactory letter A on my page. Flora had been peering over my shoulder as I drew, and I left to try on her own page once I'd finished. She immediately put too much ink on her brush, and the beginning of her first line became a messy blob as a result. I could tell that she was rushing this part, but I didn't want to frustrate her any further. Not bad. She would do some detailing with the gold paint. I could immediately sense Flora perking up. I uncorked the gold and chose a very thin brush. I like to make little patterns, and you can cheat a bit if you focus on drawing on one half like this. You can just copy it on the other side. That's still drawing 2 very detailed things. I don't think that's much of a cheat. Just give it a try. Okay. How do you do that though? Are those just random lines? I think of them as vines. Huh. That makes sense, I guess. That's a good start. Keep filling in. I sat and watched her fill in the square with gold lines. No patterns really ever came together, and I could tell that she wasn't enjoying herself. I tried to avoid staring. I knew that I wouldn't appreciate having my shoulder looked over in my cell, and Flora was liable to bite my head off if I did anything that could be interpreted as condescending. Ugh. So, what got you interested in art? I don't know. Did Catherine draw much? A bit. And she's going to teach you at one point? Before? Yep. What sort of things did she paint? Lots. Anything you particularly liked? Sure. And there was this one that she showed me that I really liked. Oh? Yeah, it was her holding some guy's head. What? It was so awesome. Whose head was it? No idea. Goodness. It was probably a hollow furnace though. I breathed a little internal sigh of relief. Of course. Do you like that story? Yeah, it's awesome. Judith is a very interesting book. Have you read the whole thing? No, just the gory parts. I resisted the urge to bang my own head against the table. But you know the general thrust of it, yes? Yeah, she pretends to be friends with Hollow Furnace and then cuts his head off. Do you know why she cuts his head off? He was a bit of an arsehole? How's your drawing coming along? I could hear that my voice was a bit pitchier than normal. Flora leaned back in her chair and gestured at her paper. That's a great first attempt. It was sloppy, but earnestly it wasn't so bad. I was certain I'd done worse when I first started out. It still feels a bit empty. You could add something to one of the corners maybe. Like what? What about a crucifix? Boring. The crucifix is not boring. It's 2 lines. I'm not being blasphemous, I just mean, it's not an exciting drawing. I don't know then. A bird? Or a cat? That's a fine idea. Flora leaned forward in her seat again, looking very engaged all of a sudden. Yeah, can you draw a cat? I don't think I've ever tried. How about we both try one separate from the illuminated letters and compare? Sure. We both started sketching with charcoal on our own papers. I tried to remember what cats looked like. I found them cute despite their reputations. I soon realised that I'd only ever seen the one scampering out of the kitchen. I actually don't know if I've ever seen a cat up close, now that I think about it. Really? Really, I just know of them, mostly. There are lions and leopards and so on in the Bible, but you never saw one before you became a nun? That was so long ago I can scarcely remember if I had. So you weren't born here then? No. Where do you come from then? Trier. Hedwig von Trier? Wow, I never would have guessed from your accent. You sound very English. I've been here most of my life. Yeah, but you're twice as old as I am. Some people's accents stick with them even when they move. Like Adela. Moira and Catherine too. First of all, I'm not that much older than you. Do you remember much from before you moved? How long ago was it? Almost 20 years ago. Wow. So you were in there for as long as I've been alive? Yes. So you were like 20 before you moved and still lost your accent? I would have been about 5 or 6, thank you very much. Oh. Or well, 7 or 8 or 9 maybe. Would have been funny if you brought the accent back for a day or two. Just confuse everyone for a bit. Hello, my name is Hedvig. Something like that. I smacked my charcoal down on the table in exasperation. My cat drawing is finished as it is ever going to be. Let's compare our drawings now, shall we? That's not what a cat looks like. I tried my best. Is that what a cat looks like? It's closer than yours. Yours has a very human face. So does yours. Whatever. Cat eyes don't look like that. Is that so? Yeah, I think so at least. They never sit still long enough for people to draw them. Flora, do you know something about the cat Angela's been chasing for weeks? Look, you have to promise not to tell anyone. I honestly felt relieved. Compared to the secrets I was keeping for Catherine, the Superior, and myself, Flora's request was positively quaint. Of course. It's just a cat. Yes, but nearly everyone else here hates cats. I have to pretend they're vermin too, but he's such a sweet little thing. He? Oh, the cat. His name's Campy. That's unique. Catherine picked it. Oh? Perhaps I was wrong about the simplicity of this promise, so I was tactically protecting a dead woman's secret as well. The full name's Campignon? Campignon? Something like that. She liked fancy classical sounding names a lot. So the cat was hers? Yeah, I guess. I don't know if you'd really call him anyone's cat. He just showed up one day and took a liking to Catherine. And she gave him a name and fed him scraps and stuff. And now he's your charge. Yep. That's sweet. I meant it when I said you need to promise not to tell anyone. Some of that lot are likely to give Campy a swift kick if he gets too close. I'd be in so much trouble if anyone found out. Don't worry, I can keep a secret. Thanks. She looked away as she said this. Her face showed not even a hint of a smile, but I still felt good. Felt like I'd made a real connection. It must be nice to have something to remember Catherine by. Well, shall we finish for now? I guess. Should we plan on meeting up again for more practice soon? She shrugged and glanced at her papers. Maybe. And? Here, take these. I handed her the sticks of charcoal. For practicing on your own. Since you like to draw. Alright. Maybe I hadn't made as real a connection as I'd hoped. And just let me know if you ever want another lesson and we can plan for it. Sure. She scooped up her drawing and stuffed it in her robe and got up to leave without pushing her chair back in. Bye, Hedvig. Have a good evening, Flora. I was left alone to pack my supplies up. I had to resist snapping one of the brushes in half. That's just how she is, I guess. It's just the way she is. Really difficult to deal with. But now we've got another secret. Look, we can pretty much bribe anyone in the whole place now. We're getting there anyway. I was completely exhausted by the time I made it to the dormitory. The relatively light art supply box weighed heavy, like a millstone going up the stairs. I practically slammed it onto my desk as soon as I made it to my room. An early night was the only thing I could think about. I got into my night clothes as fast as I could, as if I was trying to prove to myself that I indeed intended to follow through on the idea. My body was so stiff that even stripping out of my habit felt laborious, and when I bent down to pick up my nightdress off the floor, I wondered if I had the energy to stand up straight again. I groaned impolitely as I straightened out and let the clothes slip over me. Never again in my life did I want to run or hike. I was ready to sleep. However, as I ran my hands over the mattress in an attempt to straighten it out a little, I realised I'd forgotten something important. There was still a book on my bed, the copy of the Gospel of Matthew that I'd dropped off in a hurry before returning to Flora. As ominous as it was, I was at least glad I hadn't smacked my head into it, like I had with the copy of Medea currently underneath the bed. I opened the book. The cover was still slightly damp and some of the pages had fused together with vomit. I thumbed through carefully to the pages that had been opened when I'd vomited all over it. The black bile had faded, but it was quite obviously ruined. I was not sure what I was looking for. A clue, perhaps, of who had returned it to my cell or how. Perhaps some demon had magicked it there through that accursed sigil. Why exactly this devil's nefarious plan included returning books to rooms when they'd been thrown out of, I had no immediate hypothesis. I turned to the page that I'd been working on when my time in the cell had been interrupted, Matthew 5:37. As I studied the ruined pages and saw no hidden messages nor threats, my anxiety evaporated. I slammed the book shut and threw it on the floor with a thud. It was obviously another one of Eustace's pranks, I reasoned. The timing was certainly convenient, after the threats her ghost had given me in the Misericorde. I scoffed aloud with some small hope that she was somehow within earshot. Undoubtedly, if I hadn't knocked her onto her ass and unmasked her that night, this book would have been revealed to me at some portentous moment. She must have stored it in my cell to keep it out of view until whenever suited her little plan. I could just see her casually asking the Superior for the key in that infuriatingly flat voice of hers. She probably said she needed something from my shelf for the library. I think you're, maybe jumping to conclusions. I slammed my fist into my pillow and buried my face in the divot. Then I remembered something. I pulled myself up on my knees and lifted my pillow. The little strip of black cloth was there. Proof. I reached over the bed for my stocking and stuffed it inside. I couldn't wait to see the look on Eustace's face when I showed her that. If I could find a missing patch on her frock. I lay down feeling satisfied. I imagined profuse apologies over and over, and yet I still went to sleep angry. The morning offices and luncheon passed in a blur the next day. I went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd sleepwalked through several days when I'd been feeling morose, but today was different. There was a high-pitched whine between my eyes, so intense that I had a headache by the end of the service. I felt as light as a bee and equally as prone to sting whoever bothered me. It was not all anger. Some of it, I realised as luncheon came to a close, was nervous anticipation. I kept glancing over at Eustace, who seemed, to my chagrin, completely unbothered. The Superior was waiting for us outside of the rectory when we all left. She pointed at Eustace, Moira and myself and beckoned for us to join her. Are you all ready for a little fun? Absolutely. Good. It's high time the women of this abbey made an appearance in Lynbarrow village, and I thought an adventure outside the abbey would be an exciting little adventure for our newest. Well, not newest, but you know what I mean. That's you. That's me. Just a little treat. I was losing count of the little lies I was having to go along with for the sake of this quest. Moira and Darcy worked hard yesterday to bake some fritters to share with the townsfolk. What is it we're actually meant to do there? The Superior shot me a quizzical look. Spread some cheer, of course. Attend to the people's spiritual needs. Nothing heals the soul like a sweet treat. They're really good too, if I do say so myself. Eustace had said nothing for the course of the entire conversation. She remained as silent as the Superior led us across the grounds to the front gate. A cart and donkey were waiting for us. There was a sturdy chest loaded into the wooden cart that looked like one of us could have fit inside snugly. If it was full of sweet fritters, Darcy and Moira must have been very busy. I had no idea we kept a mule here. We do not. Typically we have to send word to have one delivered from the village if we need to travel, but this one has remained here ever since the incident. Oh. This is the donkey and cart that James had been driving when he was last free. Just how many animals was Darcy technically responsible for at this point? Moira stepped into the driver's seat of the cart, leaving me and Eustace to sit facing each other in the back. The Superior looked uncharacteristically amused by the sight of us loaded into the vehicle. My girls offered a diplomatic mission together. Had I the means, I would commission a painting. I haven't been down to the village in months at least. This is going to be a riot. She shook the reins in the cart and wobbled forward. Moira turned to wave at the Superior. Eustace and I followed suit, although we were both less enthusiastic than Moira. I mean, we always are. Moira is the epitome of enthusiasm. The Superior disappeared behind the road as it began to curve downwards. I looked ahead and suddenly felt a wave of panic as I realised just how long and winding the path down the mountain was and how far afield I was about to find myself. Stuck in a cart with someone I'd rather not speak to again, no less. My God, the movement kills my eyes. So this will be a new for you. I suppose it will be. Listen, Eustace, I have no real interest in speaking with you at the moment. You two, let's not fight, eh? Let's pretend all our little problems only exist in the abbey, and out here we're just travelling missionaries. Or brave soldiers on patrol. No, we're adventurous outlaws. Hedwig, I owe you an apology. More than one. She sighed and adjusted how she was sitting. She rested her forehead in her hands and looked at the floor of the cart. I should have said something yesterday, but I was indisposed. So I'm sorry it took this long, first of all. And I apologise for, well, you know. Remind me. I felt strangely powerful. I folded my arms. I'm sorry that I dressed up as a ghost. I'm sorry I tried to scare you. I went a bit far. You did it more than once. Yes. How? Why? I mean, it was so elaborate. Well, I am the sacrist. I saw the suit of armor and thought, wow, this could be good for a lark. What on earth for? Some lark? It's Abbey tradition to do some sort of hazing prank. I just got carried away. That is so petty. Petty and cruel. Even if it was appropriate to haze nuns, which it's not, why couldn't it be nicer? Aren't there any nice pranks? You're right. What about, I don't know, a surprise feast or a gift? Something along those lines. I wouldn't argue with you. I won't argue with you. You could have just said boo, perhaps. That would have still been a touch mean-spirited, but you killed a goat for your own entertainment. Eustace shook her head. I did not kill a goat. That is entirely in your imagination. I saw it plainly. Anything you saw like that was a trick of the mind, I promise. So I'm mad, is that it? No, it happens to everyone. In a heightened emotional state, you often see things that conform to your expectations. Or fears, as it were. That is ridiculous. It's true. Did you know there's a mosque in Turkey where worshippers believe they see a ghost of a young woman in the shadows? It sounds ridiculous, but so many people have claimed to see her. It could hardly be an accident. They all see a girl wearing a crown. I don't particularly care what they're up to in Turkey. Eustace let out a heavy sigh. Look, the point is sometimes people see things that aren't there, that feel very real. I promise you I didn't kill a goat. I may have been nasty to you, but I would not kill an innocent animal just to scare you. So there was no goat at all. I did not kill a goat in front of you. I would not do that. But you would dress up as a ghost. Yes. And wave a flaming sword around. Yes, when you put it that way, it does sound like a rather cruel joke. How'd you even light the sword on fire? I brushed the blade with oil and held it up to a torch. That's all. I looked her dead in the eyes. She matched my gaze for a moment before the cart hit a bump and her glasses were knocked askew. Moira was chuckling softly. Whoops, sorry. I'm not very good at this. Eustace rearranged her glasses and sighed. I don't always have a perfect grasp on how people might react to things I say or do. Sometimes I run with an idea that isn't as clever as I think it is, or speak my mind to people who weren't interested in my input. I'm sure you've noticed that I can be rather inscrutable. I was going to say flat, but I'll take inscrutable. Eustace is Eustace. Yes. Thank you, Moira. See? At any rate, I'd really like to put this behind us. We have to work together after all. Will you accept my apology? For what? Eustace was approaching this request as if my acquiescence was guaranteed, but I did not respond in kind. I felt vindictive, more vindictive than I'd felt in my entire life. She looked surprised that I hadn't budged. For my prank, as I said. And my behaviour in general, I suppose, which, as you say, can be inscrutable. I'll do my best to change that. Does that include moving my things around? Perhaps putting things in my cell to find later? What? I found it. The copy of Matthew I dropped out of the window the night you were watching me in my cell. Hedwig, I don't know what you're talking about. You have no reason to lie about this anymore. I saw you in your ridiculous costume the very night in my cell I could see you in the grass. I was not there. My temper fled and I let out an embarrassing noise, somewhere between a groan and a shriek. I pulled out my frock and pulled a piece of cloth I'd found outside the Abbey somewhat awkwardly. Eustace looked utterly nonplussed. I found this out there. Who else could it have been but you? Any of us? A drifter? A soldier marching past the Abbey who got his cloak stuck on a branch that just so happened to coincide with a woman's mad delusion months later? It could have been anyone, Hedwig. But it wasn't me. Why should I believe you, after what you did the other night? I could feel myself turning scarlet as I sputtered. I noticed Moira shrinking in her seat ahead of us, and I suddenly felt very embarrassed. Are you going to hit me again? No. No, of course not. Alright. Well, you could if you wanted to. I don't want to. Ah, well that's good. She rubbed her cheek. It did hurt quite a bit. I felt horrible now. I looked toward the back of the cart for a while, watching the road move beneath us. I'm sorry. Truly. And you promise that you haven't left any mysterious books for me anywhere. I did not put that book in your cell. I haven't ever been in your cell at all, as a matter of fact. I looked back toward Eustace. She was holding a hand out to me, and she had the faintest hint of a pleading look in her eye. I was not sure what to do. I was furious with her still, but I knew that letting that anger stew any longer would only serve to make me miserable. After all, we had to work in the same room. Not only that, but I felt highly guilty for attacking Eustace in response to a practical joke. Justified or not, it was not a response that had ever been in my repertoire, and I very much wanted to never feel compelled to violence ever again. I wanted to bury these feelings deep in the ground forever. I was still mulling over my response when a pair of fritters appeared in front of my face. Would these help? Eustace and I both looked over at Moira, who was whose back was still turned to us. She was watching the road ahead. She'd reached one arm behind her, two tasty-looking pastries, held like Adela's cards between her fingers. I tucked the little black cloth I had been waving in Eustace's face back into my stocking inside. Just wondering. Eustace and I both took one. I nibbled at it and instantly fell at peace. Wow, these are good. They were supposed to be for all the village, but I snuck a few away for the trip. I'm glad you did. I could hear Moira crunching on her own fritter. Ooh, so am I now. Goodness, these are some lucky people we're about to visit. I think you didn't like Limbarrow, Moira. Oh, I have my criticisms. Eustace took another bite of her pastry. I suppose we all do. Catherine most of all. I doubt she would have approved of this gesture. Oh, she would have done it. She would have just complained a lot beforehand. And after. They chuckled as if sharing a private joke. We finished our fritters. Eustace licked her fingers and wiped the crumbs off her frock before extending a hand out to me again. Friends? I paused for a moment, but I couldn't keep this self-righteous act up much longer. Even if I didn't fully believe that Eustace hadn't also placed that book in my cell as part of some elaborate next step in her foiled prank. I suppose I had no reason to hang it over her head forever. I reached out and grabbed Eustace's wrist and her fingers curled around my own. I think Hedwig's taking this a bit far, really. It's just a prank, bro. Friends. Eustace smiled, but her face soon returned to its default flat expression as soon as she leaned back against the side of the cart. So why wouldn't Catherine have liked doing this? She also had opinions about the townsfolk. I'm a little shocked. Does anybody have good relationship with the town? I'm sure the Superior handles it all well enough. Surely it felt a little odd that nobody from the village came to seek your advice when you're an anchoress. I was surprised until I had it explained to me that, well, now we're having to take a cart ride to even get there, aren't we? That's right. I think that people never really liked that fact. It put us on the wrong foot from the get-go. But Limbarrow Abbey is rather old, isn't it? Surely things might have, I don't know, improved? Right, the distance and inconvenience is just part of it. Well, you'll see. I suppose if I had to put it delicately, if we had the ability to choose the kind of villages our abbey served, which we don't, of course not, but if we did, it wouldn't be a town like Limbarrow. I was quite frankly appalled by this. If I hadn't already shaken hands and made up with Eustace, I might reconsider agreeing to the endeavour after hearing such conceited talk. What a horrible thing to say. It is what it is. You'll see when we get there. They're not all bad. I was trying to think of things to say that wouldn't reopen the just sutured wound between Eustace and myself, and was struggling to come up with anything. However, just as the cart rounded the switchback corner, I thought of something Catherine had said in the Misericorde. I hadn't dared to mention the assignment the Superior had given me for this excursion, but I reasoned that since Catherine herself had mentioned it to me while drinking, it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Catherine is from this village, isn't she? Catherine was Irish. She means Catherine the First. Oh, silly me. Sorry. Anyway, yes, Catherine used to live in Limbarrow. She mentioned something about being run out of town. She seemed rather bitter about it. As well she should. I'm surprised she told you all of this. But yes, it's true. We don't talk about it much. It's a fast way to put her in a rotten mood. I would feel the same. It's so unfair. Would it be prying too much to ask exactly what happened? She was quite vague about it. It's not our story to tell. Like I said, it's a touchy subject. Suffice to say, it put me off the town. The way they treated her. I won't pry. That's good. I'd be chuffed if she told you anything about it at all, though. That's real trust, that. This line of questioning seemed to be a non-starter. I'd hoped for a moment that I could get my assignment completed before stepping out of the cart. A wave of panic hit me as I realised that not only were my environs about to be completely unfamiliar, I was about to be surrounded by people. Strange new people who sounded like they were predisposed to dislike me. I did poorly enough navigating my own conflicts. Now, though, I'd be forced to deal with a feud that sounded like it had been simmering for years. How long ago had Catherine been ousted from Limbarrow, sorry? How long before that had the townsfolk resented the abbey up on the hill? I was inheriting a mess that may well have started before I was even born. The rest of our journey went without conversation. Eustace furrowed her brow and rested her chin on her hands, gazing out of the back of the cart for the remainder of the trip. Okay, and with that, it's time to wrap this one up here. Because we're out of time for today, but we're making friends with Eustace again. Honestly, I think we were way too harsh on Eustace. I mean, yeah, okay, she definitely went a bit far, but yeah, you know, it seems a bit much. Anyway, good that we're friends again. Let's see what the town's like in the next episode. That's exciting. Are they all like going to be murdering each other while they rob each other and fornicate with each other? Because That sounds like a party to me. Alright, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, Bruce.